A starving single mom took one grape at a store, but in seconds, security tackled her to the ground in front of her crying child, only for the furious owner to fire them all. But when the truth about what she was really facing comes out, the entire town is shaken. Will this desperate act destroy her family forever, or become the spark that saves them? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The flickering light in Maria Alvarez's small kitchen cast dancing shadows on the chipped linoleum floor. She stirred the pot of oatmeal one final time, making sure to scrape every bit from the bottom. The sweet smell of cinnamon, added to make the plain oatmeal more appealing, filled their tiny apartment. "Dinner's ready, Miss Amores," Maria called out, her voice warm despite the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. 6-year-old Lucas and 8-year-old Sophia rushed to the wobbly kitchen table, their homework papers hastily pushed aside. The wooden chairs creaked as they sat down, their eager faces looking up at their mother. Maria carefully divided the oatmeal into 2 bowls, making sure each child got an equal portion. She had already added extra water to stretch it further, but the bottom of the pot still came too quickly. She scraped every last bit onto their bowls, her hands trembling slightly from hunger. "Mama, aren't you eating?" Sophia asked, her dark eyes studying her mother's face with a wisdom beyond her years. Maria smoothed her daughter's hair, forcing a bright smile. "Oh, I already ate earlier while you were doing homework, Cariño. This is just for you and your brother." It was a lie that sat heavy on her heart, but she couldn't bear to let her children go hungry. The truth was, she hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days, saving every morsel for them. Lucas shoveled a spoonful into his mouth, some oatmeal dribbling down his chin. "It's good, Mama. You made it sweet today." Maria wiped his chin with a paper towel, her heart swelling with love even as her stomach clenched with hunger. "Just a little cinnamon, mi amor. It's magic. It makes everything taste better." She busied herself washing the few dishes they had, trying to ignore the way her hands shook. The running water helped mask the loud growl from her stomach, but Sophia's sharp eyes didn't miss the way her mother steadied herself against the sink. "Mama, are you sure you're not hungry? You can have some of mine," Sophia offered, pushing her bowl slightly forward. Maria turned quickly, wiping her hands on her worn jeans. "No, mijita. You need to eat to grow strong and smart." She tapped Sophia's forehead gently. "How else will you become a doctor someday?" The mention of Sophia's dream profession brought a smile to the little girl's face, temporarily distracting her from her concern for her mother. Maria silently thanked God for small mercies. As the children ate, Maria sat with them, asking about their day at school. Lucas excitedly told her about the art project they were working on, while Sophia proudly announced she'd gotten all her spelling words correct. "That's wonderful," Maria exclaimed, genuinely proud despite the dizziness that was starting to cloud the edges of her vision. She discreetly gripped the edge of the table to stay steady. When the bowls were empty, Maria helped the children with their remaining homework. The apartment was cold. She'd turned down the heat to save money, but she wrapped them in their warmest sweaters and pulled out the extra blanket she'd found at the thrift store last month. "Time for bath and bed, Miss Amores," she announced once the homework was done. The evening routine was familiar and comforting, even if she had to use less soap than usual to make it last longer. After their bath, the children dressed in their worn but clean pajamas. Maria tucked them into the single bed they shared in the small bedroom, making sure they were warm under the layers of blankets. "Story time, Mama?" Lucas asked hopefully, his wet hair curling against his forehead. "Just a short one tonight," Maria agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed. She launched into their favorite tale about a brave knight who protected his village, embellishing the story with different voices that made the children giggle. Once the story was finished, she kissed each of their foreheads. "Sweet dreams, my angels. I love you more than all the stars in the sky." "Love you too, Mama," they chorused, already drifting off to sleep. Maria quietly closed their bedroom door and made her way to the window in their small living room. The streetlight outside cast a pale glow through the thin curtains. She reached into her purse and pulled out the 2 worn dollar bills, all that remained after paying the electric bill that morning. Kneeling by the window, Maria clasped her hands together. "Dear God," she whispered, her voice catching, "please help me find a way to feed my children tomorrow. I don't care about myself, but they need food. They're growing so fast." She wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. "Please, just help me figure something out." The $2 felt impossibly light in her hand. Standing up, Maria walked to her purse and carefully tucked the bills back inside. Tomorrow, after her shift at the diner, she would stop by the grocery store. Maybe she could find something on sale, something to stretch into a meal for the children. She looked out the window one more time, watching as a few snowflakes began to fall. Despite her exhaustion and hunger, despite the cold seeping through the poorly insulated walls, Maria felt a flicker of hope. Tomorrow would be better. It had to be. She had to believe that, for her children's sake. The afternoon sun beat down through the diner's smudged windows as Maria Alvarez wiped the last table of her shift. Her arms ached from hours of scrubbing tables and carrying heavy trays. The scent of grilled burgers and French fries that had once made her mouth water now only reminded her of how long it had been since she'd eaten a proper meal. "You're all set, Maria," called Jerry, the cook, from behind the counter. "See you tomorrow." Maria nodded, forcing a tired smile as she hung up her apron. The worn fabric was spotted with grease stains that never quite came out in the wash. She collected Lucas from the corner booth where he'd been quietly doing his homework while she finished her shift. Sophia was still at school in the aftercare program. "Ready, my Joe?" she asked, smoothing his dark hair. The automatic doors of Wilson's grocery store slid open with a soft whoosh. The blast of cool air made Maria shiver in her thin uniform dress. Her fingers clutched the 2 crumpled dollar bills in her pocket as she grabbed a small shopping basket. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Maria walked through the aisles, Lucas trailing behind her. She paused in front of the bread section, carefully comparing prices. Every penny mattered. Finally, she selected the day-old clearance loaf for 89 cents. "Can we get chocolate milk, Mama?" Lucas asked, his brown eyes hopeful. Maria's heart clenched. "Not today, my amor. But look, we can get regular milk." She reached for the smallest container of milk, checking the price tag, 99 cents. That would leave her 12 cents. Not enough for anything else. They passed the produce section, and the colorful array of fruits and vegetables made Maria's empty stomach cramp painfully. Fresh grapes gleamed under the store lights, plump and purple. The sweet scent drifted over, and Maria's mouth watered. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, giving every scrap of food to her children instead. Lucas tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, your stomach is making noise again." "It's nothing, baby." But the gnawing hunger was becoming unbearable. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Before she could stop herself, Maria's trembling fingers reached out and plucked a single grape from the bunch. The small fruit felt cool against her palm. Her heart pounding, she quickly popped it into her mouth. The burst of sweetness made her eyes water. "Hey!" a sharp voice cut through the quiet store. "Stop right there!" Heavy footsteps approached rapidly from behind. Maria's blood ran cold as a large hand clamped down on her shoulder, spinning her around roughly. She found herself face to face with a red-faced security guard, his badge glinting under the harsh lights. "We got ourselves a thief," he announced loudly. Several customers stopped to stare. "Please," Maria whispered. "I'm sorry. It was just one grape." But the guard wasn't listening. Without warning, he grabbed her arms and slammed her against the produce display. Apples and oranges tumbled to the floor as Maria's basket clattered from her grip. The milk container burst open, spreading across the linoleum in a white puddle. "Mama!" Lucas screamed, his voice high with terror. The guard forced Maria's arms behind her back as she struggled to keep her balance. "Stop resisting!" he barked, though she barely moved. "Please," Maria begged, tears streaming down her face. "My son—" More people gathered around them now. Maria caught glimpses of shocked faces through her tears. The soft clicks and whirs of phone cameras filled the air as customers recorded the scene. Lucas's sobs echoed through the store, each cry like a knife in Maria's heart. "On your knees," the guard commanded, pushing her down into the spilled milk. Maria's uniform dress soaked through as she knelt there, trembling, her face burning with shame while phones captured her humiliation. The security guards marched Maria down a narrow hallway, their grip tight on her arms. Her son Miguel trailed behind them, his small shoulders shaking with sobs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making the stark white walls feel even colder. Maria's cheek stung where it had hit the floor during the tackle, and her right shoulder throbbed. They pushed her through a metal door marked Security Office. The room was small and cramped, with a desk pushed against one wall and a row of grainy security monitors along another. A plastic chair scraped against the linoleum floor as one of the guards roughly pulled it out. "Sit," the taller guard ordered. His nameplate read, "Jenkins." Maria lowered herself into the chair, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. Miguel rushed to her side, pressing his tear-stained face against her arm. She wanted to comfort him, but her hands trembled too much. "Stealing is a crime," the second guard said, his face red with anger. "We saw you clear as day on the cameras." "Please," Maria's voice cracked. "It was just one grape. My children." "Theft is theft," Jenkins cut her off. "Doesn't matter if it's a grape or a diamond necklace." The door opened, and a man in a crisp white shirt and tie entered. His face was pinched with disapproval as he looked down at Maria. The store manager's badge on his chest read, "Carl Weber." "The police are on their way," he said coldly. "This store has a zero-tolerance policy for shoplifting." Maria's stomach clenched. "Please, sir, I can explain." "Save it for the police," Weber interrupted. He turned to the guards. "Did you get the footage?" "Yes, sir," Jenkins nodded. Crystal clear view of her taking and eating the grape. Miguel's grip on Maria's arm tightened. "Mommy didn't do anything bad," he whimpered. The manager ignored him, focusing instead on his phone. "This is already showing up on social media," he muttered. "Corporate's going to have a field day with this." Maria's chest tightened. People had recorded her humiliation. Her neighbors might see it. Her other employers might see it. The room seemed to spin around her as panic set in. 20 long minutes passed before 2 police officers arrived. The female officer, Officer Chen, according to her badge, took out a notepad while her partner stood by the door. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" Officer Chen asked, her tone professional but not unkind. Maria's voice shook as she explained. "I was shopping. I hadn't eaten in 2 days so my children could have food. I took one grape, just one. I know it was wrong, but..." "She admitted it," Jenkins interrupted triumphantly. Officer Chen held up a hand to silence him. "Sir, please let her finish." The manager stepped forward. "Officer, we want to press charges. We need to send a message that theft won't be tolerated." Officer Chen looked between Maria and the manager, then at Miguel, who was still crying softly. She shared a glance with her partner before turning back to Maria. "Ma'am, technically what you did is considered theft," she said. "However, given the circumstances and the excessive response, we're going to issue a warning this time." But Weber started to protest. "Sir," Officer Chen's partner spoke up, "do you really want more publicity about how your security tackled a mother over a single grape?" The manager's face reddened, but he said nothing more. "You're free to go, miss." "Alvarez," Officer Chen said, "but please understand, if this happens again, there will be consequences." Maria nodded quickly, standing on shaky legs. Miguel clung to her hand as they followed the officers out of the security office. The walk through the store felt endless. Customers stopped to stare, some whispering behind their hands, others openly pointing. Her eyes burned with unshed tears as they approached the exit. The automatic doors opened with a whoosh of cool air. Behind her, she heard someone say loudly, "All this over a grape?" Maria quickened her pace, practically dragging Miguel across the parking lot. Her cheeks burned with shame, and the tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. She didn't slow down until they reached the bus stop, where she finally allowed herself to collapse onto the bench. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Cars drove past, and Maria wondered how many of those drivers had witnessed her humiliation. How many had recorded it? Her body ached from the rough treatment, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the crushing weight of shame and fear that pressed down on her chest. Miguel's small hand squeezed hers. "Don't cry, Mommy," he whispered, though his own eyes were still red and puffy. She pulled him close, burying her face in his hair to hide her tears. The $2 she'd brought to the store was still crumpled in her pocket, now useless since they'd never let her shop there again. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but the thought of food now made her feel sick. A group of teenagers walked past the bus stop, pointing and whispering. One of them held up their phone, and Maria turned away, knowing they were probably watching the video of her being tackled. She heard one of them snicker before they moved on. The shame burned deeper. In all her years of struggling, of working multiple jobs and stretching every dollar, she'd never felt as low as she did in this moment. She'd only wanted to quiet the gnawing hunger in her stomach, just one grape to help her get through another day. Now she sat at the bus stop, bruised and humiliated, with nothing to show for it but tears and the possibility that her moment of weakness would follow her forever online. The bus couldn't come fast enough. Maria just wanted to get home, to hide from the world and hold her children close. But even as she waited, she couldn't escape the whispers and stares of passers-by, each one a fresh reminder of her humiliation. The tiny kitchen felt smaller than usual as Maria sat at the worn wooden table with her children. The overhead light cast harsh shadows across their faces, making the worry lines around her eyes more prominent. Miguel, her 7-year-old son who had witnessed everything, pushed his beans around his plate with a fork. Her 5-year-old daughter Anna kept glancing up at her mother with confused eyes. "Mama, aren't you going to eat?" Anna asked, her small voice cutting through the heavy silence. Maria forced a smile, though her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted Anna's napkin. "No, mi amor, Mama's not very hungry right now." The lie felt bitter on her tongue, but her stomach was too knotted with shame to even think about food. Miguel suddenly dropped his fork with a clatter. "Those men were mean to you, Mama. They hurt you." His voice cracked, and fresh tears welled in his eyes. Maria reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Shh, mijijo. Everything is okay now. We're home. We're safe." But the bruise forming on her shoulder argued otherwise, and the memory of being slammed to the ground made her throat tight. "But why did they do that?" Anna persisted. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Maria swallowed hard. How could she explain desperation to a 5-year-old? How could she make them understand that sometimes a mother's empty stomach could drive her to make mistakes? Sometimes people misunderstand things," she said carefully. "But what's important is that we're together now." Across town, in countless homes and offices, phones buzzed with notifications. The video of Maria's takedown spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The shaky footage showed the security guard's excessive force in stark detail, a slight woman in clean clothes being tackled over a single grape while her son screamed in the background. Comments flooded in beneath the viral post. "This is absolutely disgusting. Who tackles someone over one grape? Theft is theft. Should have thought about our kids before stealing. I shop at Thompson's all the time. Never seen the guards act like this before. Poor woman. Look how thin she islanded. Bet she was hungry. What kind of example is she setting for her kids? Thieves deserve what they get." The debate raged online, with some defending the security guard's actions while others expressed outrage at the disproportionate response. Local community Facebook groups shared the video, and residents began identifying the store and the guards involved. Back in her apartment, Maria tucked her children into bed, her movements gentle despite her aching body. She sang them a soft lullaby, the same one her mother had sung to her, though her voice wavered more than usual. "Mama?" Miguel whispered as she kissed his forehead. "Yes, mi amor? I'm sorry I couldn't help you today." Maria's heart cracked a little more. She smoothed his dark hair back from his forehead. "No, mijijo. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing at all. Now sleep, okay?" After both children had finally drifted off, Maria sat in the darkness of their small living room. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as she replayed the afternoon's events. The hunger in her stomach had become a dull ache, familiar now after so many nights of making sure her children ate first. She pulled out her phone, intending to look for additional cleaning jobs, but her hands froze when she saw the notifications. The video was everywhere. Her humiliation had been captured, shared, discussed by strangers. She quickly turned off her phone, unable to bear reading the comments, but the damage was done. Tomorrow, she would have to walk through town knowing that people had seen her at her lowest moment. Across town, in a comfortable but modest home, Henry Thompson sat in his worn leather recliner, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he peered at his tablet. The store owner had just finished his evening routine, a simple dinner, some paperwork, and now what he thought would be a quiet moment with the evening news. Instead, his Facebook feed was filled with shares of the video from his store. At first, he didn't recognize the location. He owned several Thompson's grocery stores in the area. But then he saw the distinctive green and white tile floor he'd picked out during the last renovation. His jaw tightened as he watched the security footage. The woman, thin, tired-looking but dignified, reaching for a single grape. The security guard's unnecessarily aggressive response. The child's terrified screams. The other customers' shocked faces. Thompson removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. In 40 years of business, he'd dealt with his share of shoplifters. But this was different. He could see the desperation in the woman's face, the way she'd hesitated before taking that grape. One grape, worth perhaps a few cents. His late wife, Margaret, would have been appalled. She'd always said you could judge a society by how it treated its most vulnerable members. She'd been the one who'd insisted they keep a small fund for customers who came up short at the register, though they'd never advertised it. Thompson watched the video again, his face growing harder with each viewing. The security company he'd contracted had assured him they would treat his customers with respect. They'd promised professional behavior and good judgment. Instead, they'd attacked a hungry mother in front of her child. The comments under the video grew more heated by the minute. Some called for boycotts of his store. Others defended the guards. But Thompson wasn't interested in the court of public opinion. He was interested in doing what was right. He set his tablet down on the side table with deliberate care. The clock on the wall showed 11:43 p.m. Too late to do anything tonight. But tomorrow, he would take action. He hadn't built his business by letting others tarnish its reputation with cruelty. More importantly, he hadn't spent 40 years serving this community to let anyone be treated this way in his store. In the quiet of his living room, surrounded by photos of his late wife and the life they'd built together, Henry Thompson made his decision. The security company would have to go, but that wouldn't be enough. He needed to make this right. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk as Maria walked her children to school. Her shoulders hunched forward, and she kept her eyes fixed on the ground, counting each step to avoid meeting anyone's gaze. The events from yesterday played over and over in her mind, like a cruel movie she couldn't turn off. Miguel walked close to her side, his small hand gripping hers tightly. Ana skipped ahead, blissfully unaware of her mother's distress, her pink backpack bouncing with each step. The morning air was crisp, carrying the sounds of other families making their way to school. "Good morning, Maria," called Mrs. Peterson from her front porch. Maria's chest tightened. Had she seen the video? The friendly greeting felt like sandpaper against her raw emotions. She managed a weak wave, but quickened her pace. As they approached the school gates, she heard whispers. Two mothers huddled together, their phones out, stealing glances in her direction. Maria's cheeks burned. She knew what they were watching. "Okay, Miss Amores," she said, kneeling to hug her children. "Be good today. I'll pick you up after work." Miguel hesitated. "Mama, are you okay?" Maria forced a smile. "Of course, Mihijo. Everything will be fine." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth. She watched them disappear into the building, then hurried away, pulling her worn jacket tighter around herself. The diner where she worked was 15 blocks away, and every step felt heavy with shame. Across town, Henry Thompson's ancient pickup truck rumbled into the store's parking lot earlier than usual. His weathered face was set in grim determination as he marched through the automatic doors, nodding curtly to the morning staff. The security team was gathered near the entrance, the same guards who had tackled Maria yesterday. "All of you, my office, now." His voice carried the quiet authority of a man who rarely raised it. The guards exchanged nervous glances, but followed him to the small office at the back of the store. Pictures of Henry's late wife lined the walls, her gentle smile a stark contrast to his current expression. "Sit down," he commanded, settling behind his desk. The three guards squeezed into the chairs across from him. "Mr. Thompson, if this is about yesterday," the head guard began. Henry held up his hand. "Don't. I saw the video. The whole world saw the video." He leaned forward, his blue eyes hard as steel. "In all my years running this store, I have never been so ashamed." "Sir, she was stealing a grape." Henry's fist hit the desk. "One grape. And you tackled a mother in front of her child, made her cry, humiliated her in front of dozens of people." The guards shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "This store has been serving this community for 40 years. My father opened it. My wife helped run it until the day she died. It's not just a business. It's a place where people should feel safe." He stood up slowly. "You're all fired, effective immediately. But Mr. Thompson, turn in your badges. Clean out your lockers. I want you gone in 15 minutes. The guards sat stunned for a moment before filing out, their faces a mix of anger and embarrassment. Through his office window, Henry watched them leave, then picked up his phone. He had more calls to make. The lunch rush at the diner was in full swing. Maria wiped down tables mechanically, her movements automatic after years of practice. The familiar sense of coffee and grilled onions filled the air, but her stomach had stopped growling hours ago. She'd grown used to ignoring its protests. "Maria?" Jenny, one of the younger waitresses, rushed over. "Did you hear what happened at Thompson's grocery?" Maria's hands froze on the table she was cleaning. Her heart seemed to stop for a moment. "Mr. Thompson fired all the security guards this morning," Jenny continued, her eyes bright with excitement. "My cousin works there. She said he was furious about how they treated some customer yesterday. Called them a disgrace to the community and everything." Maria's legs felt weak. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "Really?" she managed to whisper. "Yeah. He made this big speech about how the store needs to treat people with dignity and respect. Said things are going to change around there." For the first time since yesterday, Maria felt something other than shame. It was small, fragile as a butterfly's wing, but unmistakable, but hope. Someone had seen what happened and thought it was wrong. Someone with power had taken action. She blinked back tears as she resumed wiping the table. Her movements slower now, more deliberate. The weight on her shoulders felt just a little lighter. Maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. "Table 7 needs coffee," called out Rita, the head waitress. Maria straightened up, tucking her cleaning cloth into her apron pocket. As she walked to the coffee pot, her steps were steadier than they had been all day. The memory of yesterday still stung, but now it was tempered by something else, a tiny spark of dignity rekindling in her chest. The evening sun painted the small kitchen in warm golden hues as Maria stirred a pot of simmering soup on the stove. For the first time since yesterday's horrible incident, her shoulders felt a little less heavy. The news about Mr. Thompson firing the security guards had spread through town like wildfire, and something about his actions made her feel less alone. The apartment filled with the rich aroma of chicken broth and vegetables, a proper meal she'd managed to make from the few ingredients left in her nearly empty pantry. Miguel sat at the wobbly kitchen table, carefully working on his math homework, while Anna colored beside him, her crayon moving in wild circles across the paper. "Mama, is the soup ready?" Anna asked, not looking up from her drawing. "My tummy's making growly noises." Maria managed a small smile. "Just a few more minutes, mi amor. The carrots need to get soft." She tasted the broth, adding a pinch more salt from their dwindling supply. The weight of yesterday still pressed against her chest, but at least tonight she could feed her children a warm meal. "Did you finish problem number 6? She asked Miguel, grateful for this moment of ordinary family life. Her son nodded, pushing his notebook toward her with pride. The peaceful scene shattered at the sharp knock on their door. 3 loud raps that made Maria's spoon clatter against the pot. Her heart jumped into her throat, and she quickly turned down the heat under the soup. "Stay here, Miss Amores," she whispered, wiping her hands on her worn apron. Miguel's pencil stopped moving, and even Anna looked up from her coloring, sensing the sudden tension in their mother's voice. Maria's legs felt heavy as she walked the short distance to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a uniformed figure standing in the dim hallway light. Her hands trembled as she undid the chain and turned the lock. The county officer stood straight-backed in the doorway, his face professionally neutral. "Maria Alvarez?" She nodded, unable to find her voice. "This is for you." He held out an official-looking envelope. "You're being served with notice that the county prosecutor is pressing charges for theft that occurred yesterday at Thompson's grocery." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he wasn't delivering words that could destroy her entire world. Maria's fingers felt numb as she took the envelope. But it was just 1 grape," she whispered, her accent thickening with fear. "Mr. Thompson, he fired the guards." "The store owner's actions don't affect the prosecutor's decision to pursue charges," the officer stated flatly. "The court date is listed in those documents. Do you understand your rights as they've been explained to you?" Maria nodded mechanically, though she barely comprehended his words. The officer continued speaking, but his voice seemed to come from far away, drowned out by the rushing sound in her ears. "Mama?" Miguel's worried voice cut through the fog. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, mihijo," she managed to say, though her voice cracked. "Go back to your homework." The officer finished his rehearsed speech and left his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Maria closed the door with shaking hands, the envelope feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. She walked back to the kitchen table, her legs unsteady. The soup bubbled softly on the stove. Forgotten. Anna had returned to her coloring, but Miguel watched his mother with worried eyes that seemed too old for his young face. Maria sank into the rickety kitchen chair, the notice trembling in her hands. The words swam before her eyes. Criminal charges, petty theft, court appearance required. But one phrase stood out with terrible clarity. If convicted, may result in fines, jail time, and/or loss of custody. Loss of custody. The words stabbed through her heart like ice. These two precious children, her whole world, could be taken from her. All because hunger and desperation had led her to take one single grape. The afternoon light continued to fade outside their small window. Anna hummed softly as she colored, switching between blue and green crayons. Miguel pretended to focus on his homework, but his eyes kept darting to his mother's face. The normal sounds of their evening, papers rustling, crayons scratching, soup simmering, continued around her, but Maria sat frozen, staring at the paper that threatened to tear her family apart. Her children played and worked beside her, innocent of how their world could change. The sound of Anna's humming, Miguel's pencil scratching against paper, ordinary sounds that suddenly seemed impossibly precious. Maria's eyes burned with unshed tears as she gripped the notice, unable to move, unable to think beyond the terror of losing them. The soup continued to simmer on the stove, its once comforting aroma now turning her stomach. The evening shadows lengthened across their small kitchen, but still Maria sat motionless, the terrible notice in her hands, as her children carried on with their innocent activities, unaware that their whole world hung by a thread. The morning air held a crisp chill as Maria walked her children to school, her worn sneakers scuffing against the cracked sidewalk. Miguel and Anna's small hands clutched hers tightly, their backpacks bouncing with each step. The familiar route felt different today, heavier somehow, weighted with the stares of passing neighbors and parents. A group of mothers huddled near the school gates parted as Maria approached, their whispered conversations falling silent. One woman offered a sympathetic smile, while another quickly looked away. Maria kept her eyes forward, trying to ignore the burning sensation in her cheeks. "Have a good day at school, Miss Amores," Maria whispered, kneeling to hug her children. She straightened Miguel's collar and smoothed Anna's hair, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Remember to be good, okay?" "Okay, Mama," they chorused. Anna wrapped her arms around Maria's neck one more time before skipping toward her classroom. Miguel lingered, his young face creased with worry. "Don't be sad, Mama," he said quietly. "I told my friends you're not a bad person." Maria's heart clenched. She touched his cheek gently. "Thank you, Mihijo. Now go on, you'll be late." She watched them disappear into the building, then began her walk home, each step feeling heavier than the last. The morning sunshine did little to warm the cold knot of fear in her stomach. Back in her apartment, Maria tried to keep busy. She scrubbed the already clean counter, reorganized the meager contents of her cupboards, and folded the small pile of laundry for the third time, anything to keep her mind off the legal notice that sat on her kitchen table like a ticking bomb. The knock on her door came just after 3 o'clock. Maria froze, her heart hammering. Was it another officer? A social worker? Her hands trembled as she approached the door and peered through the peephole. An elderly man stood in the hallway, his silver hair neatly combed, wearing a cardigan and holding what looked like a paper bag. She didn't recognize him at first, but then it clicked. She'd seen his photo in the local paper. This was Mr. Thompson, the store owner. Maria opened the door slowly, uncertainty making her movements cautious. "Yes? Mrs. Alvarez?" His voice was gentle, almost grandfatherly. "I'm Henry Thompson, from Thompson's Grocery. May I come in for a moment?" She hesitated, then nodded, stepping back to let him enter. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, and she was acutely aware of the worn furniture, the patched curtains, the water stain on the ceiling. "Please, sit down," she offered, gesturing to the small kitchen table. Her face flushed as she noticed the empty fruit bowl, the bare countertops. Mr. Thompson set the paper bag on the table. "I brought some fresh bread from our bakery," he said, "and a few other things. It's the least I can do after what happened yesterday." "You didn't have to," Maria began, but he held up a hand. "Yes, I did." He settled into one of the mismatched chairs, his kind eyes meeting hers. "What happened in my store was unacceptable. Those guards were wrong to treat you that way, and I wanted to apologize in person." Maria sank into the chair across from him, her eyes filling with tears she couldn't hold back. "I'm sorry, too," she whispered. "I shouldn't have. The grape. I know it was wrong, but you were hungry," Mr. Thompson finished softly. "Tell me about it, Mrs. Alvarez. Tell me what brought you to that moment." And suddenly, like a dam breaking, the words poured out. Maria told him about her husband's death 2 years ago, about the mounting bills and the cleaning jobs that barely covered rent. She explained about stretching every dollar, about going hungry so her children could eat, about the constant fear of falling behind. "I work so hard," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "2 jobs, sometimes 3 when I can find them, but it's never enough. And now, with these charges." Her voice broke. "If they take my children—" Mr. Thompson reached across the table, patting her hand. His touch was warm and reassuring, reminding her of her own father. "That's not going to happen," he said firmly. "We won't let it happen." He cleared his throat, sitting up straighter. "Mrs. Alvarez, I came here today with a proposition. My store needs good people, honest people, who understand the value of hard work and family. I'd like to offer you a part-time position, starting at $15 an hour." Maria stared at him, hardly daring to breathe. "But after what happened was a tragedy that never should have occurred in my store," Mr. Thompson said. "I've been in business for 40 years, Mrs. Alvarez, and I've learned to recognize good people in bad situations. You're a mother trying to protect her children. That's something I respect." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I promise you this, if you accept this position, you'll have my full support, both with the job and with these ridiculous charges. What do you say?" Maria's hands trembled as she folded them in her lap. The offer seemed almost too good to be true. A regular job, better pay, a chance to work in a real store instead of cleaning other people's messes. But more than that, it was the kindness in Mr. Thompson's eyes that touched her heart. The first real kindness she'd seen in so long. I don't know what to say," she managed finally. "Say yes," Mr. Thompson smiled. "You can start next week, after we get all the paperwork sorted out. The hours will work around your children's school schedule." Maria took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "Yes," she said softly. Then again with more conviction. "Yes, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he replied, standing up. "And please call me Henry. We'll see you Monday morning at 9. As he walked to the door, he paused, turning back to her. "Mrs. Alvarez? Things are going to get better. You'll see." Maria stood outside Thompson's grocery, fidgeting with the hem of her faded blue blouse. She had ironed it 3 times that morning, trying to smooth away years of wear. Her black pants, though clean, showed thin patches at the knees. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders before pushing through the glass doors. The store's fluorescent lights cast a familiar glow across the polished floors, where she had faced humiliation just days ago. But today was different. Today, she walked in as an employee, not a desperate mother. Mr. Thompson spotted her from his office doorway and hurried over, his kind face creasing into a warm smile. "Maria, right on time. Come on in, let's get you started." His enthusiasm helped ease the knot in her stomach. He led her to the break room where 2 other employees were having coffee. "Everyone, this is Maria Alvarez, our newest team member." A young woman with red hair, Jenny, gave a friendly wave. The other worker, Tom, nodded politely. "Jenny will show you the ropes today," Mr. Thompson explained. "She's been with us for 5 years and knows everything about this place." Jenny stood up, setting her coffee aside. "Ready for the grand tour?" Maria nodded, grateful for the welcoming atmosphere. As they walked the aisles, Jenny explained the store layout and basic procedures. "Don't worry if you don't remember everything right away," Jenny assured her. "It took me weeks to learn where all the organic products go." The morning crowd began trickling in. Maria noticed the sideways glances and whispers as customers recognized her. An elderly woman stopped her cart to peer at Maria's name tag. "Aren't you the one from that video?" the woman asked loudly. Maria's cheeks burned. But before she could respond, Jenny stepped in. "Maria's helping us reorganize the canned goods section today. Speaking of which, Mrs. Peterson, your favorite soup is on sale." The distraction worked, and the old woman moved on. Jenny gave Maria's arm a gentle squeeze. "Don't let them get to you. People will find something else to gossip about soon enough." Throughout the morning, Maria threw herself into her work. She organized shelves with careful precision, making sure every can and box faced forward. The physical labor felt good, purposeful, and honest. When Mr. Thompson passed by to check on her progress, he nodded approvingly. "You have a good eye for detail," he commented, noting how she'd arranged the products by size and type. "That's exactly how I like it done." Not everyone was so encouraging. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit muttered "thief" under his breath as he passed. Two women in yoga pants whispered and pointed while selecting produce. But for every unkind gesture, there seemed to be a counterbalance of support. A young mother with 3 kids stopped to introduce herself. "I signed the petition," she said warmly. "What happened to you wasn't right. I'm glad Mr. Thompson gave you a chance." By lunchtime, Maria's feet ached, but her spirit felt lighter. In the break room, Jenny shared her sandwich, insisting Maria try the homemade pickles she'd brought. They chatted about their kids, discovering their children attended the same school. The afternoon brought new challenges, as Maria learned to operate the price gun and handle inventory sheets. She made a few mistakes, but Mr. Thompson's patience never wavered. "Everyone starts somewhere," he reminded her when she apologized for mispricing a display of cereal boxes. At closing time, Mr. Thompson called her into his office. Maria's heart raced, worried she hadn't performed well enough. But he was smiling as he handed her an envelope. "First day's pay," he explained. "I know it's not standard to pay daily, but I thought you could use it right away. You did good work today, Maria. Real good work." Maria clutched the envelope, tears pricking at her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for everything." "See you tomorrow at 9, he replied simply. The walk home felt different than her usual tired trudge. Her feet still hurt, but there was a spring in her step she hadn't felt in months. She stopped at the corner store to buy milk and fresh bread with her day's wages. At home, Miguel and Ana rushed to greet her, their faces bright with curiosity. "Mama, where were you today?" Miguel asked as she hung up her jacket. Maria gathered them both into a tight hug. "Come sit down, mis amores. I have something to tell you." They settled onto the worn couch, one child on either side of her. "Remember Mr. Thompson, the nice man who visited us? He gave Mama a job at his store. I'm going to be working there now, helping customers and organizing things." Ana's eyes widened. "The store with the big candy aisle?" Maria laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. "Yes, that store. But don't get any ideas about free candy." Miguel hugged her tightly. "Does this mean you won't be so tired anymore, Mama?" "I'll still be tired, mi amor," she said, ruffling his hair. "But it's a good kind of tired. And now we can have fresh bread for breakfast tomorrow." The children's excitement was contagious. They bounced around the apartment, playing grocery store with their stuffed animals, while Maria prepared a simple dinner. Even the small kitchen seemed brighter somehow. At bedtime, Maria tucked them in with extra kisses. Ana giggled as Maria pretended to scan her teddy bear like a grocery item.
"Beep. One precious girl, ready for sleep."
"Do it again, Mama," Miguel requested, holding up his action figure. Maria played along, making scanning noises that sent both children into fits of laughter. Their joy echoed off the thin walls, filling the tiny bedroom with warmth. For the first time in months, the sound of their happiness wasn't tinged with worry about tomorrow. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of First Community Church, casting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. Maria hesitated at the entrance, her children's small hands in hers. She hadn't been to church since the incident, afraid of judgment, of whispers, of sideways glances. "Mommy, look at the pretty windows," her daughter whispered, tugging at her sleeve. Maria managed a small smile, adjusting the collar of her daughter's second-hand dress. Pastor James Carter's rich, warm voice carried across the sanctuary. "Welcome, welcome." He strode toward them, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. His dark suit was pressed, but comfortable-looking, like the man himself. "I'm so glad you could join us today." Maria ducked her head, but the pastor's gentle manner put her at ease. "Thank you, Pastor," she murmured. "It's been a while." "Every Sunday is a new beginning," he said, leading them to a pew. "And you're always welcome here." Throughout the service, Maria found herself relaxing. The familiar hymns washed over her like a soothing balm. Her children swayed to the music, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of peace. After the service, Pastor Carter approached their pew. "Maria, would you join me in my office for a moment? The children can enjoy some cookies in the fellowship hall." Maria followed him down a narrow hallway, past bulletin boards covered with children's artwork and prayer requests. His office was modest but welcoming, with a small cross on the wall and family photos on his desk. "I've heard about what happened at Thompson's grocery," he said directly but kindly, gesturing for her to sit. "And about the charges." Maria's throat tightened. "Pastor, He held up a hand. "You don't need to explain. What happened to you wasn't just about a grape. It was about dignity, about humanity." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "This community needs to do better." "I don't know what to do," Maria admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I'm convicted, I could lose my children." Pastor Carter stood, pacing thoughtfully. "Then we'll fight this. Together." He turned to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm starting an online petition right now. We'll demand the charges be dropped." Maria watched in amazement as he crafted the petition, describing her situation with compassion and clarity. "But will it make a difference?" "Never underestimate the power of community," he said, hitting the publish button. "Now, let's get the word out." By the time Maria collected her children from the fellowship hall, Pastor Carter had already shared the petition with the congregation. People gathered around her, offering words of support and promises to sign. Mrs. Jenkins, the choir director, hugged her fiercely. "We're with you, dear. This isn't right." That afternoon, the doorbell of Maria's apartment began ringing. First came the Wilsons from 2 streets over, carrying paper bags filled with fresh produce and bread. Then the Martinez family arrived with homemade enchiladas and rice. "We can't let you go through this alone," Mrs. Martinez said, setting the warm dishes on Maria's small counter. The stream of visitors continued. The Thompson sisters brought cereal and milk. Mr. Peterson, the retired teacher, delivered a box of pantry staples. Each person mentioned signing the petition, sharing it with friends and family. Maria's tiny kitchen filled with food, more than she'd seen in months. Her children's eyes grew wide at the sight of fresh fruit, cookies, and their favorite snacks. The small apartment buzzed with the energy of community love. By early evening, Maria sat at her cramped kitchen table, surrounded by her children and the overwhelming evidence of her neighbors' kindness. The petition had gathered hundreds of signatures in just hours. Her phone kept buzzing with messages of support. Looking at her children's happy faces as they enjoyed a proper Sunday dinner, emotion welled up inside her. The weight of weeks of shame and fear crashed against this wave of unexpected kindness. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Her daughter climbed into her lap, while her son pressed against her side. "Don't cry, Mama," they said. But these weren't tears of sadness. Maria gathered them close, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. They sat there together, surrounded by bags of groceries and containers of home-cooked meals. Tangible proof that they weren't alone anymore. Through her tears, she looked at the abundance on their table, not just food, but hope. The simple act of sharing a meal had transformed into something sacred, a testament to the power of community and compassion. Her children's arms around her felt like anchors, keeping her steady in this storm of emotion. The Sunday afternoon light slanted through their window, casting a golden glow over their small family gathering. In that moment, wrapped in her children's embrace, surrounded by evidence of her community's love, Maria let herself feel something she hadn't experienced in a long time: belonging. Maria walked into Thompson's grocery early Monday morning, her work apron neatly folded over her arm. The morning light streamed through the large front windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air. Her footsteps echoed in the empty aisles as she made her way to the break room. But something caught her eye at the front counter. A steady stream of customers had already gathered, though the store wouldn't open for another 30 minutes. They weren't there to shop. They were lined up to sign something. Maria's chest tightened when she realized what it was. The petition her pastor had started was spread across the counter, pages and pages of signatures filling the sheets. Some people were even taking photos with their phones, sharing the moment on social media. "Good morning, Maria," Mr. Thompson called out from behind the counter. His eyes crinkled with warmth as he waved her over. "Come see this. We've got over 2,000 signatures already." Heat crept up Maria's neck as she approached. An elderly woman who had just signed looked up and reached for Maria's hand. "We're with you, dear," she said softly. What they did to you wasn't right. Thank you, Maria whispered, her voice catching. She quickly wiped at her eyes with her free hand. More customers began filtering in as opening time approached. Maria tried to focus on her work, stocking shelves, checking inventory, helping customers find items. But she couldn't ignore the steady stream of people stopping by just to sign the petition. Around mid-morning, Mr. Thompson gathered all the staff near the front of the store. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she stood with her co-workers. The store had grown quite full, and customers paused their shopping to listen. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. He wasn't a tall man, but he had a presence that commanded attention. "Folks," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the store, "I want to say something about compassion and second chances." The store fell silent. Even the usual beeping of the checkout scanner seemed to pause. 45 years ago, when I opened this store, my late wife Martha made me promise something. She said, "Henry, make this place more than just a store. Make it a place where people matter." He paused, his eyes growing distant for a moment. I've tried to keep that promise. But 2 days ago, I failed. When one of God's children came here hungry and desperate, she wasn't shown compassion. She was shown cruelty. Maria's eyes welled up as Mr. Thompson continued. But today, I see this community coming together to right a wrong. I see people standing up for kindness, for understanding, for second chances. He turned to face Maria directly. And I see a young woman who, despite everything, shows up every day with dignity and grace, working hard to provide for her children. Spontaneous applause broke out among the customers and staff. Maria ducked her head, overwhelmed by the show of support. A few people called out, "We're with you, Maria!" and "God bless you." The rest of the day passed in a blur of well wishes and kind words. Customers would touch her arm gently as they passed, offering encouraging smiles. Some shared their own stories of hard times and helping hands. One woman even slipped her a card with a phone number, saying she knew of a better-paying job that might be opening soon. As closing time approached, Maria found herself working with a lighter heart than she'd had in months. The shame that had weighed her down since the incident felt less crushing. In its place, she felt something new growing. Hope, maybe, or dignity. Perhaps both. The last customer left, and Maria began her closing duties. She swept the floors, straightened the shelves, and helped count the registers. Mr. Thompson had already gone home, trusting her with the closing shift. In the quiet of the empty store, Maria paused by the produce section. The grapes were there, purple and plump under the fluorescent lights, but they didn't mock her anymore. Instead, they reminded her of how much had changed in just a few days. She switched off the main lights, leaving only the security lamps glowing. Standing in the dimness, Maria closed her eyes and folded her hands. "Thank you," she whispered, her quiet prayer floating up into the peaceful silence. "Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Maria walked home from school with her children, plastic grocery bags rustling in her hands. The weight felt different now, not like a burden but like a blessing. Her daughter Sophia skipped beside her, pigtails bouncing, while her son Miguel carried his backpack and chatted about his math test. "And then Mrs. Peterson said my work was super neat," Miguel beamed, pulling out a paper with a red A marked at the top. "Can we put it on the fridge, Mama?" Maria shifted the grocery bags to one hand so she could ruffle his hair. "Of course we can, mi amor. I'm so proud of you." Across the street, Mrs. Rodriguez was tending to her flower garden. She straightened up when she saw them, wiping her hands on her apron. "Hello, Maria, kids!" She waved warmly, her smile genuine and kind. It was different from the pitying looks Maria had grown used to over the past year. "Hi, Mrs. Rodriguez," Sophia called out, waving back enthusiastically. As they continued down the block, more neighbors acknowledged them. Mr. Chen from the laundromat gave them a friendly nod. The Watson kids, playing basketball in their driveway, paused their game to wave. Even grumpy old Mr. Peterson, who rarely spoke to anyone, tipped his hat as they passed. "Mama, Jenny from my class asked about your new job today," Sophia said, reaching for Maria's free hand. "I told her you work at Thompson's Grocery now. She said her mom shops there all the time." Maria squeezed her daughter's small hand. "What else did you tell her?" "I said you're the best worker there," Sophia declared proudly. "And that Mr. Thompson really likes you because you work so hard," Miguel chimed in. Yeah, and I told Bobby that you're going to be a manager someday. He thought that was really cool. Maria's heart swelled at her children's unwavering faith in her. Just weeks ago, she'd felt invisible, or worse, like a failure. Now, watching her children beam with pride as they talked about her job, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. They reached their apartment building, climbing the familiar stairs to the second floor. The hallway no longer felt as dreary as it once had. Someone had placed a potted plant by their door, probably Mrs. Torres from next door, who'd been bringing little gifts ever since the incident at the store. Inside their apartment, Miguel rushed to the kitchen to proudly display his math test on the refrigerator, using their last Mickey Mouse magnet to hold it in place. Sophia helped Maria unpack the groceries, carefully arranging the fresh fruits and vegetables in the bowl on the counter. "Can I help make dinner, Mama?" Sophia asked, already pulling out her little apron, a birthday gift from last year that she treasured. "Me too," Miguel called from the living room, where he was setting up his homework on the coffee table. Maria smiled, her heart full. "Of course you can both help. We're making chicken and rice tonight." The kitchen came alive with activity. Sophia washed the vegetables while Miguel measured the rice. Maria seasoned the chicken, showing them how to sprinkle the spices just right. The apartment filled with delicious aromas and the sound of their chatter. As they worked, Sophia told stories about her day at school, how she'd helped a new student find the library, and how her teacher had praised her reading. Miguel described the soccer game at recess, where he'd scored 2 goals. Their voices were animated, full of the simple joys of childhood that Maria had feared they might lose. When dinner was ready, they sat around their small table together. The plates were full. No more carefully rationed portions or empty stomachs. Maria watched as her children ate heartily, their faces glowing in the warm kitchen light. Sophia had a small smudge of rice on her chin, and Miguel was carefully separating his vegetables into neat piles before eating them one by one. "Mama, can we have seconds?" Miguel asked, already eyeing the serving dishes. "Of course, mi cielo," Maria replied, her voice soft with gratitude. "There's plenty for everyone." As she watched them eat, joy bubbled up inside her chest, pure and sweet, like a spring of clear water. Their apartment might be small, their furniture worn, but in this moment, it felt like the richest home in the world. The weight of constant worry had lifted from her shoulders, replaced by something lighter, something that felt like possibility. Sophia caught her eye across the table and grinned, rice still stuck to her chin. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, Mama," Miguel echoed, his mouth full of chicken. Maria reached out and took their hands, squeezing gently. "I love you both so much," she said, her heart so full it felt like it might overflow. The evening light filtered through their kitchen window, painting everything in warm gold, and for the first time in a very long time, their home felt exactly as it should, filled with love, hope, and the simple joy of being together. The familiar walls seemed to glow with new life as laughter and conversation flowed freely around their dinner table. This was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of their resilience, their love for each other, and the brighter future that now seemed within reach. Maria's stomach tightened as she approached the brick building where her landlord's office was located. The familiar musty smell hit her nostrils as she pulled open the heavy door, her work uniform still carrying the faint scent of cleaning products from her morning shift at Mr. Thompson's store. The narrow hallway seemed longer than usual, each step on the creaking floorboards echoing her growing anxiety. She'd received the call during her lunch break. Mr. Jenkins wanted to see her right away. The urgency in his secretary's voice had made her heart sink. The waiting room was empty, except for a tired-looking fern in the corner and a stack of outdated magazines on a scratched coffee table. The secretary, Mrs. Palmer, looked up from her computer and gave Maria a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Go right in, dear. He's expecting you." Maria smoothed her uniform and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear before knocking softly on the door marked, "Property Management." "Come in," called a gravelly voice. Mr. Jenkins sat behind his cluttered desk, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He was a thin man in his 60s, with salt and pepper hair and weathered hands. Maria had always found him to be fair, if a bit distant. Today, he wouldn't meet her eyes as she settled into the cracked leather chair across from him. "Maria?" he began, clearing his throat. "I wish this was a different kind of meeting." Her hands twisted in her lap. "Is everything okay, Mr. Jenkins?" He pulled out a manila envelope from a drawer and placed it on the desk between them. "I've been patient, Maria. I really have. But the building has expenses, and I can't keep carrying tenants who are behind on rent." Maria's throat went dry. "I know I'm a little behind, but with my new job at the store—" "3 months behind," he interrupted gently. "And that's not counting this month." He slid the envelope toward her. "I'm sorry, but I have to issue an eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the apartment." The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright. Maria's fingers trembled as she reached for the envelope. "Please, Mr. Jenkins. My children. We have nowhere else to go. I can make partial payments now that I'm working more hours." He held up a hand, his expression pained. "I've heard about your situation. The incident at the store, the charges. I sympathize. I really do. But I have to think about the building's bottom line. My hands are tied." Maria opened the envelope with numb fingers, scanning the official notice through blurring eyes. The words seemed to swim on the page. Notice to quit. Failure to pay rent. 30 days. If you can pay the full amount owed by the end of the month. 400. "We can talk about a new arrangement," Mr. Jenkins said. But they both knew it was impossible. That amount might as well have been $1 million to Maria. She clutched the envelope to her chest. "My kids are settled in school here. They've already been through so much." Her voice cracked. Mr. Jenkins shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I suggest you start looking for other arrangements right away. The housing authority might be able to help." He shuffled some papers on his desk, signaling the end of the conversation. "I truly am sorry, Maria." She stood on shaky legs, the envelope feeling like lead in her hands. Mrs. Palmer avoided her gaze as she passed through the waiting room. The hallway blurred as tears threatened to spill. Outside, Maria leaned against the building's brick wall, taking deep breaths of the autumn air. She had 15 minutes left of her lunch break, but her appetite was gone. The eviction notice burned in her hands like a brand of failure. The rest of her shift at the store passed in a fog. She stocked shelves mechanically, her mind spinning with calculations she'd done 100 times before. Even with her new job, even if she skipped meals entirely, there was no way to come up with that much money so quickly. When she finally made it home that evening, her children were already asleep on the pull-out couch, their homework spread across the coffee table. Maria's mother had watched them again, leaving a note about heating up leftover casserole from the church ladies. Maria didn't bother with food. She sank into a kitchen chair, spreading the eviction notice on the table beside the court summons she'd received days earlier. The harsh kitchen light illuminated both documents, twin harbingers of disaster. Her eyes traced the familiar cracks in the ceiling, the water stain that never quite went away no matter how many times Mr. Jenkins sent someone to paint over it. This tiny apartment had been their sanctuary after James died, the only place they could afford on her meager income. Now it, too, would be taken from them. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Maria stared at the papers before her, each one representing a different way her world was crumbling. The court date that could separate her from her children, the eviction that would leave them homeless. The weight of it all pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She glanced at her sleeping children through the doorway. Tommy had kicked off his blanket again, and Sophia's stuffed rabbit had fallen to the floor. They looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm gathering around them. Maria sat motionless at the kitchen table, the harsh light casting deep shadows across her face. The enormity of her situation settled over her like a heavy blanket. Everything she'd built, every small step forward, seemed to be slipping through her fingers like sand. The table before her held the evidence of her failures, the eviction notice and court summons laying side by side, a brutal testament to how quickly life could fall apart. Maria stood at the kitchen counter, mechanically chopping carrots for soup. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, the weight of the eviction notice and court summons crushing her spirit. The small apartment felt even tinier tonight, the walls seeming to close in around her. She dropped the vegetables into the pot of boiling water, watching them disappear beneath the surface, just like her hopes had vanished today. The steam rose, providing a convenient excuse for the moisture in her eyes. "Mommy?" 8-year-old Louise called from the tiny dining table where he was doing homework. "Are you okay?" Maria quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Of course, mi amor. Just the onions making my eyes water." But there weren't any onions, and they both knew it. 6-year-old Sophia looked up from her coloring book. her dark eyes studying her mother's face with that uncanny perception young children sometimes have. "You look sad, Mama." "I'm just tired, sweetie." Maria stirred the soup, fighting to keep her voice steady. "It was a long day at work." The children exchanged worried glances. Maria saw their reflection in the kitchen window, their concerned faces making her heart ache even more. She'd tried so hard to shield them from her struggles, but children always knew more than adults gave them credit for. She ladled the simple soup into 3 bowls, adding the last pieces of bread from yesterday. The meal was meager, but at least it was hot. Since starting at Mr. Thompson's store, she'd been able to buy fresh vegetables again. Now, with the eviction looming, even that small victory felt hollow. "Eat up, Miss Amores," she said, setting the bowls down. Her own remained untouched as she watched them eat, her stomach too knotted with worry to manage more than a few sips. Sophia pushed her spoon through the broth. "Mama, why aren't you eating?" "I had a big lunch at work," Maria lied, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. She hated being dishonest with her children, but the truth would only worry them more. Louise saw through it immediately. "No, you didn't. You gave me your sandwich today, remember?" The simple observation broke something inside her. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Then another, and another. "I'm sorry," she whispered, quickly standing and turning toward the sink. Her shoulders shook with the effort of containing her sobs. I'm just tired. Please finish your dinner." But the children didn't return to their meals. Instead, she heard their chairs scraping back, small arms wrapped around her waist as Sophia and Luis hugged her from both sides. "Don't cry, Mama," Luis said, his voice wobbling. Maria tried to compose herself, but the dam had broken. All the fear, exhaustion, and worry she'd been holding back came flooding out. She slid down to sit on the worn linoleum floor, gathering her children close as she wept. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying between sobs. "I'm trying so hard. I'm trying to be strong for you both." The tears fell faster as she thought about the eviction notice stuffed in her purse, the court summons that threatened to tear her family apart, all because of one desperate moment with a single grape. After everything, Mr. Thompson's kindness, the community's support, her new job, it still wasn't enough. She'd failed them. Sophia wiggled out of her embrace and stood up. In the dim kitchen light, her small face was solemn and wise beyond her years. She reached out and took Maria's face between her tiny hands, the way Maria often did when comforting her children. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice clear and sure. "You're my hero." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "You work so hard," Sophia continued, wiping her mother's tears with gentle fingers. "You always make sure we're okay. Even when you're sad, you smile for us. You're the bravest person I know." Luis nodded vigorously. "Yeah, Mama, you're like Wonder Woman, but better because you're real." A laugh bubbled up through Maria's tears. She pulled both children back into her arms, holding them tight. Their simple faith in her, their pure love, filled her chest with warmth. "Oh, my beautiful children," she murmured, pressing a kiss to Sophia's forehead. "What did I do to deserve you?" The tears were still there, but something else was growing alongside them. Strength. Her children's words had rekindled the fighting spirit she'd thought was extinguished. Yes, things were hard. Yes, she was afraid. But she was their mother, their hero, and heroes didn't give up. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The problems hadn't disappeared, but somehow they seemed less overwhelming with her children's arms around her. Their love was like a shield, protecting her from despair. "Time for bed, Miss Amores," she said softly, rising from the floor. "Let's get you tucked in." As she helped them change into pajamas and brush their teeth, Maria felt something shifting inside her. Her daughter's words echoed in her mind. "You're my hero." Not because she was perfect, not because she never struggled or cried, but because she kept going. Because she loved them enough to try, even when it seemed impossible. She tucked them into their shared bed, smoothing the thin blanket over them. Sophia reached up and touched her cheek one more time. "I love you, Mama." Maria leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead, then did the same for Luis. "I love you both, more than all the stars in the sky." Standing up, she switched off the small lamp, leaving only the soft glow of the nightlight. Her tears had dried, and in their place was a renewed determination. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight she was reminded of what truly mattered, the love of her children, and their unwavering belief in her. She was their hero, and heroes found a way. A weak morning light filtered through Maria's thin curtains as she stood before her bathroom mirror, smoothing down her best blouse. The fabric was worn but clean, pressed carefully the night before. Her reflection showed dark circles under her eyes, evidence of another sleepless night spent rehearsing what she would say to the judge. "Your Honor," she practiced quietly, her voice barely above a whisper to avoid waking her children. "I know what I did was wrong, but—" She stopped, shaking her head. The words felt hollow, inadequate to express the desperation that had driven her to that moment. In her bedroom, she pulled out the one formal skirt she owned, checking it for loose threads or stains. It had been her interview outfit years ago, back when hope came more easily. Maria slipped it on, grateful it still fit, though a bit looser now than before. The morning routine with her children felt surreal. She packed their lunches with trembling hands, trying to maintain normalcy despite the court date looming over her. Their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, would watch them after school. Another kindness she'd have to repay somehow. A knock at the door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw Mr. Thompson's familiar face, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. Maria opened the door, surprised to see him so early. "Good morning, Maria," he said warmly, holding up a paper bag. "I brought you some breakfast. Can't face court on an empty stomach." "Mr. Thompson, you didn't have to—" "Nonsense," he interrupted gently, stepping inside. "And I wanted to show you something." He pulled out his phone, opening a web page. "The petition, Maria. Look." She leaned in, her eyes widening at the number. 10,347 signatures. Each one represented someone who believed in her, who saw her as more than just that desperate woman who took a grape. "People care, Maria," Mr. Thompson said softly. "The whole community is behind you. Pastor Williams will be there, and so will I. Half the town's planning to show up at the courthouse." Maria sank into a kitchen chair, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve all this support." "You deserve every bit of it, Mr. Thompson insisted. "You're a good mother doing her best in impossible circumstances. That's what we're going to make sure the judge understands." Her children emerged from their room, already dressed for school. They greeted Mr. Thompson with shy smiles. They'd grown fond of him during their visits to the store. "Eat your breakfast," Maria urged them, pulling out cereal bowls. Mr. Thompson watched with approval as she finally took a bite of the breakfast sandwich he'd brought. "I spoke to my lawyer friend," he mentioned casually. "He's confident, Maria. The circumstances, the community support, your clean record, it all works in your favor." Maria nodded, not quite daring to believe it. She'd learned the hard way that hope could be dangerous. Throughout the morning, her phone buzzed with encouraging messages. The diner where she cleaned had given her the day off, with her boss even sending a character reference letter. The school principal had done the same. After walking her children to school, Maria returned home to practice her statement one final time. She stood before her mirror again, shoulders straight despite her fear. "Your Honor," she began, stronger this time, "I'm a mother who made a mistake out of hunger, not greed. I'm asking for mercy, not just for myself, but for my children who need me." The words still felt inadequate, but they were honest. Sometimes, she reflected, truth in its simplicity was the most powerful defense. The afternoon stretched endlessly. Maria cleaned her already spotless apartment, organized her documents, and checked her court outfit for the 10th time. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo in the quiet room. As evening approached, she laid out clothes for tomorrow, the same outfit she'd practiced in, freshly pressed again. Her hands shook slightly as she tucked the court notice into her purse, placing it by the door. In her children's room, she watched them sleep peacefully, unaware of tomorrow's significance. Their faces held such trust, such innocence. She couldn't bear the thought of failing them. Back in her room, Maria knelt beside her bed, clasping her hands tightly. The prayer came easily, flowing from a heart both terrified and hopeful. "Lord," she whispered, "please give me strength tomorrow, not just for me, but for my children. And thank you for Mr. Thompson, for the community, for all these blessings I never expected." She touched the cross hanging around her neck, her mother's final gift before passing. Tomorrow would determine so much: her freedom, her children's future, their very ability to stay together as a family. The court notice sat in her purse by the door, a simple piece of paper that held such power over their lives. Maria switched off her light, knowing sleep would be elusive but determined to rest. Tomorrow would require all her strength, all her dignity, all her faith in the goodness she discovered in her community. The old church bells chimed softly as the evening sun cast long shadows through its stained glass windows. Maria hesitated at the entrance, her children's small hands clasped tightly in hers. The wooden doors stood open, welcoming the steady stream of people filing inside. She could hear the low murmur of voices and smell the familiar scent of wood polish and old hymnals. "Come on in, Maria," Pastor Carter called out warmly from the doorway. His gentle smile put her at ease. "Everyone's waiting for you." Maria's eyes widened as she stepped inside. The church pews were filled with familiar faces, customers from the store, neighbors she'd only waved to in passing, and even some of her children's teachers. Mr. Thompson sat in the front row, his weathered face brightening when he saw her. "Mommy, look how many people came," her daughter whispered excitedly. Pastor Carter guided them to a reserved seat in the front, and Maria felt her cheeks flush as dozens of encouraging smiles followed her down the aisle. Her children settled beside her, their eyes wide with wonder at the gathering. "We're here tonight," Pastor Carter's rich voice filled the sanctuary, "to show our support for a member of our community who has shown remarkable grace in the face of injustice. Maria Alvarez isn't just fighting for herself tomorrow. She's standing up for every person who has ever faced hardship with dignity." Maria blinked back tears as Pastor Carter continued. "But before we pray together, I'd like to open the floor to anyone who wishes to share a word of encouragement." One by one, people began to stand. Mrs. Peterson, who owned the flower shop next to the grocery store, rose first. "Maria, every morning when I see you walking your children to school, I see a mother's love in action. You hold your head high, and that's taught me something about strength." A young college student who worked part-time at the store stood next. "I've watched you work twice as hard as anyone else, always with a kind word for everyone. You've shown me what real character looks like." More voices joined in. The elderly man who came to the store every Tuesday for his groceries spoke about how Maria always helped him reach items on high shelves. A mother from her children's school shared how Maria had once given her last dollar to another child who had forgotten their lunch money. Mr. Thompson slowly rose to his feet, his voice steady and clear. "Tomorrow, I'll be proud to stand before that judge and tell him exactly what kind of person Maria Island. She's the kind of employee who makes our store better, the kind of neighbor who makes our community stronger. And I won't stand by while anyone tries to tear her down over a single grape when she was just trying to feed herself." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the congregation. Maria felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, her vision blurring with tears. Her son leaned against her arm, and she pulled him close. Pastor Carter stepped forward again, raising his hands. "Let's join together in prayer for Maria and her children. Let's pray for justice to prevail tomorrow, and for strength for this family we've all come to care about deeply." The congregation bowed their heads, and Maria felt the powerful presence of dozens of people praying for her family. Pastor Carter's words washed over her like a healing balm, speaking of hope, justice, and community love. After the final "Amen," people began to approach Maria individually. Some offered hugs, others pressed small notes into her hands. An elderly woman she recognized from the store shuffled forward with a homemade casserole. "For after court tomorrow," she said with a warm smile, "you'll need your strength." Mr. Thompson made his way to her side, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember, Maria, you're not walking into that courtroom alone tomorrow. We'll be right there with you." As the gathering began to disperse, Maria found herself surrounded by a small circle of women who promised to watch her children during the court proceedings. Their offers of help were practical and heartfelt, from rides to school to packed lunches. The sun had set by the time Maria and her children stepped out of the church. The street lamps cast a gentle glow on the sidewalk, and a cool evening breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine. Her children skipped alongside her, their spirits lifted by the community's warmth. "Can we go to the park tomorrow after court, Mommy?" her daughter asked, swinging their joined hands. Maria squeezed her daughter's small hand, feeling a surge of courage flow through her. The weight of tomorrow's trial still loomed, but it felt lighter somehow, shared among so many caring hearts. Her children's innocent questions about tomorrow reminded her that they saw beyond the current struggle, and their faith in her never wavered. As they walked home under the starlit sky, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: true hope. The love shown by her neighbors, The steadfast support of Mr. Thompson and Pastor Carter's powerful words had filled her heart with a quiet courage. Each step felt stronger, more purposeful. Her children's hands were warm in hers as they made their way down the familiar streets. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet evening, 3 hearts beating with renewed strength, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Maria approached, her heart pounding against her ribs. She wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton piece she'd ironed 3 times the night before. Her hands trembled as she clutched her small purse, containing nothing but a tissue and the crumpled court summons. She paused at the bottom of the steps, taking deep breaths to steady herself. The massive stone building loomed above her, its columns stretching toward the sky like silent judges. Maria had never felt smaller. "Maria!" a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Mr. Thompson hurrying toward her, dressed in a neat brown suit that looked a bit too big for his frame. "You're not walking in there alone." Before she could respond, more voices joined in. Pastor Carter emerged from his car, his warm smile visible even from across the parking lot. Behind him, a steady stream of people began arriving. Faces she recognized from the store, from church, from around town. They gathered around her, like a protective shield. "We're all here for you," Pastor Carter said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Every single one of us." Maria's vision blurred with tears as she looked at the growing crowd. There was Mrs. Peterson, who always bought her groceries on Tuesday mornings. The young couple who ran the coffee shop down the street. Even her neighbor who had watched her children last week so she could pick up an extra shift. Inside the courthouse, Maria's footsteps echoed against the marble floor. She expected empty wooden benches. Instead, she found the courtroom already half full of familiar faces. More people filed in behind her, filling nearly every available seat. The murmur of quiet conversation filled the air with a gentle hum of support. Mr. Thompson guided her to the defendant's table, where her court-appointed lawyer waited. The young attorney's eyes widened at the size of the crowd. "All these people," Maria whispered, still struggling to believe it. "They came for me?" "They came because they know what's right," Mr. Thompson replied firmly. "And this isn't right," the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise!" The room fell silent as Judge Matthews entered, his black robes sweeping behind him. His expression remained neutral as he surveyed the packed courtroom. The proceedings began with the prosecutor, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, laying out the case. His voice carried less conviction than usual as he glanced repeatedly at the crowd of observers. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. The defendant took merchandise without paying." "If I may, Your Honor." Mr. Thompson stood up when it was his turn to testify, his voice steady and clear. "I'm Henry Thompson, owner of Thompson's Grocery." The merchandise in question was a single grape, worth perhaps 2 cents. He turned slightly, addressing not just the judge but the whole room. "I've owned that store for 42 years. I've seen theft. This wasn't theft. This was hunger. This was a mother who hadn't eaten in days so her children could have food." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his chair as Mr. Raked. Thompson continued. "The security guard who tackled her? I fired him immediately. The real crime here was how she was treated, not what she did." Pastor Carter approached the stand next, carrying a thick stack of papers. "Your Honor, I have here a petition signed by over 10,000 members of our community." He placed it carefully on the judge's desk. "These signatures represent people who know Maria, who understand her character, who witness her daily struggle to provide for her children with dignity." The judge adjusted his glasses, studying the petition with careful attention. The prosecutor stood again, but his earlier confidence had evaporated. "Your Honor, while the community's interest in this case is noted, the law is clear." "The law," Judge Matthews interrupted, "exists to serve justice, not to compound suffering." He set down the petition and looked directly at Maria. "Stand up, please, Mrs. Alvarez." Maria rose on shaky legs. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. "I've been a judge for 25 years, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hushed courtroom. "In that time, I've learned that justice without mercy is no justice at all. I've reviewed the security footage. I've read the petition. I've heard from your community." He paused, removing his glasses. "The worth of that grape was pennies. The worth of your dignity, and the dignity of every person who faces the choice between hunger and shame, is immeasurable." The bang of his gavel made Maria jump. "Case dismissed." The sound that filled the courtroom wasn't cheers or applause, but something more profound, a collective sigh of relief, of justice served, of community triumphant. Maria's legs gave way, and she sank back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Thompson's hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. Around her, the crowd began to stand, their faces bright with emotion. Pastor Carter's deep voice carried over the gentle commotion. "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for seeing what we all see, that compassion must sometimes speak louder than law." Maria couldn't move, couldn't speak through her tears. The weight of fear that had pressed down on her for weeks finally lifted, leaving her lightheaded with relief. She felt hands patting her back, heard voices offering congratulations, but it all seemed distant, dreamlike. "It's over," Mr. Thompson said softly, helping her to her feet. "You're free, Maria. You're free." The afternoon sun streamed through the store's front windows, casting long shadows across the aisles where Maria had once felt such shame. Now, as she pushed through those same automatic doors, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Customers and staff burst into applause, their faces beaming with genuine joy. Some were even wiping tears from their eyes. "Welcome back, manager," someone called out, making Maria's heart skip a beat. She hadn't expected such a reception. Mrs. Peterson, a regular customer who had signed the petition, rushed forward to embrace her. "We knew justice would prevail, dear," she whispered, squeezing Maria's shoulders. "This store hasn't been the same without your smile." Maria's eyes welled up as more customers approached, offering congratulations and warm words. Her cheeks flushed with emotion, not from shame this time, but from the overwhelming support of her community. She noticed some of the same faces who had witnessed her darkest moment, now celebrating her triumph. Mr. Thompson stood near the customer service desk, his weathered face creased with a proud smile. He waited patiently as Maria made her way through the crowd, accepting hugs and kind words. When she finally reached him, he gestured toward his office. "Maria," he said, his voice warm and firm, "would you join me for a moment?" Inside his office, Maria sat across from the desk, where she'd first received her chance at redemption. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, warming the small space. Mr. Thompson settled into his chair, folding his hands on the desk. "You've shown extraordinary strength these past weeks," he began, his eyes kind. "The way you've handled yourself, your dedication to work, your grace under pressure, it's exactly what this store needs in leadership." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Thompson?" He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a name badge. It gleamed under the office lights. "Maria Alvarez, store manager. This store needs someone who understands both struggle and compassion," he continued, sliding the badge across the desk. "Someone who can lead with empathy and strength. I can't think of anyone better suited for the job." Maria stared at the badge, her vision blurring with tears. "But are you sure? After everything?" "Especially after everything," Mr. Thompson interrupted gently. "You've earned this, Maria. The staff respects you, the customers trust you, and I believe in you." Her hands trembled as she picked up the badge. The weight of it felt significant, not heavy with burden, but solid with possibility. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't let you down." Mr. Thompson stood, walking around the desk. "I know you won't. Now, let's introduce our new manager to the team." The staff gathered in the break room, their faces expectant. Mr. Thompson's announcement was met with genuine enthusiasm. Carlos from Produce pumped his fist in the air. Sarah from Checkout wiped away happy tears. These people who had become her second family now looked at her with respect and affection. Maria spent the afternoon learning her new responsibilities, her mind swimming with schedules, ordering procedures, and management protocols. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, she felt energized. Each new task was a step further from the desperate woman who had once stolen a grape. As closing time approached, Mr. Thompson pulled her aside one last time. "There's one more thing," he said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a check, her new salary, with a signing bonus that would cover her back rent. "We take care of our own," he said simply, patting her shoulder before heading home. Later that evening, Maria unlocked her apartment door, the weight of her new name badge still unfamiliar against her chest. The smell of cooking food greeted her. Her daughter had started dinner, just as she'd been taught. "Mommy!" her children cried in unison, running to hug her. They noticed the badge immediately, squealing with excitement as she explained her promotion. "Does this mean we can stay in our apartment?" her son asked hopefully. Yes, mi amor, Maria answered, kissing his forehead. We're going to be just fine. They sat down to dinner together. Simple rice and beans with vegetables, but it tasted like a feast. Maria watched her children eat, their plates full, their faces relaxed. For the first time in months, there was no gnawing worry about tomorrow's meals, no mental calculations about stretching dollars. Her daughter reached across the table and took her hand. I'm proud of you, Mommy, she said softly. Maria squeezed her daughter's hand, looking at her children's faces in the warm kitchen light. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long had finally lifted. In its place was something new, hope, solid and real as the name badge in her pocket. They ate together, sharing stories about their day, laughing freely. The evening light filtered through their kitchen window, painting everything in soft, golden hues. Maria savored each bite, each moment, each smile. This meal was more than dinner. It was a celebration of second chances, of community, of survival. The humble kitchen table that had witnessed so many worried nights now held a family dining in peace. Maria's heart felt full, not just with food, but with gratitude and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they ate without fear. Tonight, they were whole. The autumn breeze swept through the grocery store's newly renovated community space as Maria arranged the final touches on the buffet tables. Colorful paper lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the room. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the sign that read, Community Family Dinner, all welcome in both English and Spanish. Mommy, can I put out more napkins? Her daughter asked, clutching a stack to her chest. Her son followed close behind, carefully balancing a basket of bread rolls. Maria smiled, touching her daughter's cheek. Of course, mija. Make sure to spread them out evenly. She watched her children work together, their faces glowing with excitement. Just weeks ago, they had gone to bed hungry. Now, they were helping others fight that same battle. Mr. Thompson appeared at her side, his weathered face creased in a warm smile. Everything looks perfect, Maria. You've done an amazing job organizing this. I couldn't have done it without your support, Maria replied, straightening her name tag that now read Store Manager, or the staff's help. She gestured to her coworkers, who were putting final touches on the setup. The first families began trickling in at 6 p.m. Maria recognized many of them from the neighborhood. The single father who worked 3 jobs, the elderly couple living on a fixed income, the young mother with 4 children who reminded Maria so much of herself. Each person was greeted with warmth and dignity. Welcome, Maria said, her voice strong and clear. Please, make yourselves comfortable. There's plenty for everyone. The community room slowly filled with the sounds of conversation and laughter. Children darted between tables, making new friends. Elderly neighbors shared stories with young parents. The aroma of fresh bread and hot soup filled the air. Maria's son helped younger children reach the juice dispensers, while her daughter offered seconds to anyone whose plate was empty. Pride swelled in Maria's chest as she watched them embody the kindness that had saved their own family. Your children are natural helpers, said Pastor Roberts, who had stopped by to support the event. Just like their mother. Maria blushed, remembering how the pastor had rallied the community around her during her darkest hours. They understand what it means to need help, she said softly. And how important it is to give back when you can. A young woman approached Maria hesitantly, holding a sleeping toddler. I saw your story on the news, she whispered. I've been too ashamed to ask for help, but seeing you here. Tears welled in her eyes. Maria reached out and squeezed her hand. There's no shame in needing support, she said firmly. We're here every week. Please come back. The evening progressed with a steady flow of people coming and going. Maria moved through the room, making sure everyone had enough to eat, listening to stories, offering words of encouragement. Her children followed her example, their small acts of kindness multiplying throughout the room. Mr. Thompson watched from the doorway, beaming like a proud father. This is exactly what our community needed, he told Maria. A place where people can break bread together with dignity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, families gradually said their goodbyes. Many hugged Maria, thanking her not just for the meal but for creating a space where they felt valued and seen. Same time next week, several people asked hopefully. Every Wednesday, Maria confirmed with a warm smile. We'll be here. After the last guest left, Maria and her children began the cleanup process. They worked together efficiently, their movements synchronized from years of taking care of each other. Mommy, did you see how many people came? Her daughter asked, carefully stacking chairs. And everyone was so happy, her son added, gathering empty plates. Maria paused, her sweeping to pull them both close. Yes, I saw. You both did such a wonderful job helping everyone feel welcome. The final tasks of the evening went quickly. Maria checked the locks one last time while her children waited by the front door. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Standing between her children, Maria looked up at the darkening sky. Her heart felt full to bursting with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice carrying all the emotion of their journey. From desperation to dignity, from shame to strength. Her daughter slipped her small hand into Maria's. Her son leaned against her other side. Together, they stood in the gentle evening breeze, a family transformed. Maria was no longer the woman who had once plucked a grape out of desperate hunger. She was no longer crushed by shame or fear. Here, with her children beside her and the means to help others find their way out of darkness, she was thriving. They had become more than survivors. They were now a beacon of hope for others walking the same difficult path. As they turned to head home, Maria knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to serve. But for the first time in years, she faced the future not with dread, but with confidence and purpose. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Maria Alvarez, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.